Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor. I'm Reverend Theresa Rohlck, and it has been a great honor and pleasure to have collaborated on today's service with members of UUAA's trans and non-binary community. If you would join me in welcoming to our pulpit Joe Libin, Amber Music, Eli Kranz, and Arika Lycan will make a virtual appearance in a little bit. The collaboration in translating joy this week would not have been possible without our acting director of music, Carter Smith, our pianist-in-residence, Allison Halerz, and our technology consultant, Mike Halerz. And of course, this moment of worship happens because of you all viewing on live stream, because of you all who are here in the sanctuary, and anyone watching at yet to be known times in the future. This happens because you chose to spend time in community with each other and with us. Take a moment and look around at who is present. Announce your presence in the chat if you'd like. A community like this has been gathering in Ann Arbor for over 155 years. This is a congregation committed to the Unitarian Universalist principles, to work for social justice, and to create space that allows for spiritual growth as each person understands it. The people and relationships we have established with each other brings us back again and again. We hope that for anyone who is new or visiting, perhaps searching for a spiritual home, that you might also feel inspired to come back. For those in person, there's a newcomer welcome that happens right after the service, just outside these doors, up a little ways and to the right in the Jackson Chapel. There'll be someone there to help answer your questions. And if you are connecting virtually, we want to be sure that we reach you as well. There's a newcomer survey you can fill out on our website, and someone will follow up with you. Everyone is invited to participate in today's Sunday Fun Day in the social hall right after this service to celebrate spring, even though a very, very chilly spring. A reminder also that next week we will return to coffee hour in the social hall. Yes. And we will begin to sing again as a congregation. Yes. Albeit with masks, but we will sing. And you can review all of the newest COVID policies for April and May on our website. This congregation has committed to radical welcome as one of the priority areas we will focus on in the coming years. Radical welcome goes beyond what we might think of as friendly hospitality, which, to be sure, is important. But the idea of radical welcome may be somewhat baffling to you. And no, you're not alone. You will have a chance to deepen your understanding of radical welcome today and next Sunday in services at services and at our third gathering table event, which will be held via Zoom at 2 p.m. next Sunday afternoon. Registration for that will be in the weekly news and on our website. The guest speaker, Alex Capitan, will be with us for both the morning services and the gathering table event. Now, to prepare us to expand and grow our sense of inclusivity, accessibility, and diversity, I offer words of Leslie Takahashi from her poem, Marginal Wisdom. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this. The rest is false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe in the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center. Dear ones, finding joy in who we are, in our authentic voices and selves, does not always come easily or without great risk, particularly for those of us with marginalized identities. And once found, sharing that joy is liberating, but not risk-free. I believe we can mitigate the risk and aspire to a world where the risk is eliminated altogether. May this be a community where that happens. May this be a radically welcoming community. May today's stories and voices offer you wisdom from the margins. We are gathered for worship.
Good morning. We here and Unitarian Universalists everywhere light a chalice when we gather as a symbol of how we've chosen to join together into one community. For this little while, we are one people together in fellowship. I'd like to invite Rowan Anders to come up and light our chalice. For those joining us on live stream this morning or whenever you're watching, I invite you to light a chalice or candle along with me. Then, if you'd like, add a message into the chat that shares where you are and that you've lit your own chalice as a sign that you're here in spirit with us. Please join me as we say, we light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Rowan. The beauty of our community is that we have a mosaic of different beliefs. We may disagree on the existence and nature of souls or spirits or gods, but we still show up for each other each and every week. And one way that we are joined is our common covenant. This is a promise we make to each other about the type of congregation we strive to be. So please join me in saying, the spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you.
Good morning. It's nice to see everybody here. I'd like to start by sharing a story that's called Perfectly Norman, and it's written by Tom Percival. Norman had always been normal, perfectly normal, until one day he grew a pair of wings. Norman had always imagined growing taller or growing a beard like his dad, but he had never imagined growing a pair of wings. Still, they were here now, so he decided to test them out right away. Soon, Norman was swooping around and generally having the most fun ever. But then, he had to go in for dinner. You see, Norman had always been so normal, he didn't know how his parents would feel about his extraordinary wings. As he went in, Norman covered himself up in a great big coat. His parents didn't notice the wings, but they did think it was odd to be wearing a coat indoors. Bath time was problematic. So was bedtime. The coat was hot and uncomfortable, but Norman had decided that no one should see his wings, ever. The next day, Norman went to the park, but he was far too hot to play any of his favorite games. And so it went on. Long car journeys were unbearable. The swimming pool was dreadful. And that was nothing compared to his friend's birthday party. The only time that Norman could feel normal now was when it rained. One day, a boy tried to pull his coat off, and Norman had to run away, hot-faced, angry, and sad. He wished he'd never grown those stupid wings. Then he saw some birds high up in the sky, and he remembered the joy of his first flight. It occurred to Norman that it was the coat that was making him miserable, not the wings. "Why don't you take that scruffy old thing off?" suggested his mom and dad. Norman looked up at them hesitantly. His parents smiled and nodded, and Norman smiled back. Then he threw off the coat and let his wonderful wings fan out. Norman leapt into the air. Finally, he was free of that coat. He noticed a few other children wearing thick, heavy coats of their own. They looked up at Norman and around at one another nervously. There was a moment's pause, and then, whoosh! The sky was filled with flying people. Norman had never been so happy. He realized there was no such thing as perfectly normal. But he was perfectly Norman, which was just as it should be. The end.
Thank you, Joe. That was beautiful. Hello again. I started coming to this church using my name, Amber Music, a month before I came out at work. 3 months before it was even my legal name. But y'all made me feel welcomed and seen, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'm trans and non-binary. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I don't have all the answers about what gender is. How we define gender depends on our families, our society, our cultures, our bodies, our religions, everything. So we'll each have our own personal definitions. And in fact, my personal definition of gender depends on who I'm around. Here in this congregation in Michigan, and at work, I use they, them pronouns, call myself non-binary. And now I'm going to admit something to you that I haven't told anyone here. With my family and with some friends, I feel more comfortable calling myself a woman. This thing we call gender is weird. Personally, I take these different identities because those are what feel comfiest around those people. And being called Aunt Amber by my 2 nieces is, I don't know, the most joyful thing I've ever experienced. For me, the gender has its biggest effect on how we fit into our communities. This is also the thing that brings me the most complicated feelings about gender, because sexism and patriarchy have artificially created and perpetuated certain gender roles. In my family, the women cook the food and the men don't. I don't know. Come Thanksgiving, my mom or my aunt talk about who's hosting the party and what foods people should bring. At the party, the men will be gathered outside next to the grill, talking, or they might be in the living room watching football. The women will be in the kitchen, though, also talking, but, maybe finishing up the meals and talking about what they've brought for it. I still remember the Thanksgiving after I came out, when I first realized I would have to work hard to be seen for who I am. As usual, the women who had been organizing all month what to bring and what to make, they were in the kitchen. And even my sisters were asked to cook a dish for dinner. But I wasn't. And I realized this while I was sitting alone in the living room, because the men had just left to go grill. And the women were in the kitchen, and I could hear them. I overheard them talking about, oh yeah, I brought, the mashed potatoes, or I brought the green beans. And I didn't know where to go. I didn't know whether to go to the right, the women were there, but they had all participated in making this meal, and I hadn't. I wasn't invited to that bit. But to the left was the outside and the grill, and all the men were around. Maybe some of them were drinking beers, and I definitely didn't want to go there. Not at the first Thanksgiving as my gender as I actually was. I didn't want to be seen as a guy out there with them. And so I sat there in the living room, and I don't think there's a great end to this story, because I just felt awkward that whole Thanksgiving and trying to figure out, how am I going to fit in here? What's my new place in this family going to be? On the other hand, though, when I came out at work, the next week I noticed I was added to the Association for Women in Mathematics mailing list. I didn't even ask. I was welcomed into the conversations that other women were having about their classes in the university. A woman from the office came around and changed the nameplate on my door, which, I don't know, that was a great day when I had my name on the door for the first time. But there were people systems in place that helped me feel seen, and it felt so welcoming and affirming. Like overnight, I was accepted for who I was there. Now, 100% my family loves me more than anybody at work did, right? Like, they're my family, I love them more too. But my job had seen other trans people and knew what to do. They had put in work to be inclusive. I was the first trans person in my family, maybe the last, but we'll see. And they didn't know what to do. So I guess the point is, being an ally and being inclusive aren't about how much love you have necessarily, but they are about what you do and how much work you can put in. Over time, I did find ways to find my place in my family. My mamas, just country word for grandma, I guess, sewed and quilted, and so making the most of the pandemic, I took up quilting myself. I spent weeks piecing and sewing and hand quilting a throw for my friend and her wife. It was a spiritual experience, spending that time. Every single stitch was like a little meditation. I'm like, yeah, I am a woman in this family. Here I'm in quilting. None of the men did that. So this simple quilt was proof that I was nurturing, I was giving, I was loving, and I was a woman from this family. I also put myself in charge of getting the family together for Zoom chats and helping us stay connected during the pandemic. I claimed these roles for myself. It was my way of fighting to be seen in my family as who I was. And yet, quilting or tending to the social well-being of a family, that didn't make me a woman, but they are ways that I was a woman, that I was. And what does it mean to look like a woman or to look non-binary or anything like that. In graduate school, back before I came out, I wore bow ties and sports coats, and I was being perceived as a man. I was going hard into the nerdy professor look. I had patches on my elbows, chalk dust on the pants. Like, that is, I don't know, that's the part of an outfit that just complements everything, I think. But I love that look. But I didn't want to be seen as a man with the chalk on my pants. I wanted to be seen as a woman with the chalk on my pants. So it was scary, but I decided to change a lot of the things about how I present myself. I changed my name. I changed how I style my hair. I changed hormones. I changed the cuts of my clothes. I chose to change these ways I present myself so maybe that the outside world could see a little bit of the inside world. My name helps me feel more feminine. My hair sends a message that I just maybe am queer. My clothes make me feel a little bit of a tomboy. And finally, after years, when people meet me, they see something true about me. Now, I don't want to give you all the wrong impression. These gender performances we do, they aren't what define gender. We should feel free to take or discard whatever bits and pieces of those we like, right? At the core, my gender expressed itself as an urge to be seen, the hope that women might see me and accept me as one of them, the hope that men will stop seeing me as one of the boys, and for me to be able to look in the mirror after these years and see a beautiful, non-binary face looking back. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and greetings. My name is Arika Lycan. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I'm here today to invite you to share in the congregational offering. Today's offering will be supporting UUAA's ministries and programs. As a lay leader in several UUAA groups, including Racial Justice ARC and the Shared Ministries team, I can speak to the importance of giving directly to UUAA to support the work of our programs, groups, and ministries. Your contributions help our congregational groups to continue the great community work they're doing, both within UUAA and beyond in Washtenaw County, to help fund our SGD programs and more. Two programs that are near and dear to my heart and relevant to our focus of our service today are Kaleidoscope, a place for UUAA folks, everyone under the rainbow, whose vision is to build an intergenerational space where we can flourish in our queer and trans lives and promote more inclusion in our congregation and beyond, and True Hope, our UUAA youth group for LGBTQIA youth that aims to grow community and provide social, support, educational, and activist programs and opportunities for our youth to explore their identities and their interests. You can give to UUAA by visiting uuaa.org/giving, contribute in person through checks or cash in the baskets at the back of the sanctuary, or text UUAA to 73256. Thank you so much for your generosity. Your support is appreciated.
Thank you, Allison. The title of the piece Allison just played is Come Just As You Are. This is a space where you can come and be present just as you are. So will you, in all of your glorious variety of selves, rise in body and spirit as you are able? And join me as we take a moment to articulate the impact of our gifts. Please join me as we dedicate our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives, and these our offerings. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good morning again. I'd like to begin with a poem I wrote called Eternal. Holy Spirit, I am humbled in your presence. In strength I stand rooted in this earth, these feet on the curve of her circumference, solid in my conviction to keep my heart oriented towards manifesting love in all I do. Let your never-ending love be a home to return to, having never left. Let me be perceived with eternal positive regard in that celestial ancestral home to which we all return, from which we all sprung. Circle, circle, circle round the sun. I am both nothing and everything, insignificant and potential energy unleashed, as I align myself to my truest form, an expression of you, eternal, you who is and was and always will be. I am both a manifestation of and a reflection of your greatness. Having forgotten everything upon arrival, I learned this form of me, this branch of the river, this tributary to greatness, this ever so queer, quite slightly woo, good boy of a daddy, this sweetheart, this beam of light and love. In my lowest moments, when I have forgotten again that I am wholly complete, resoundingly deserving, a conduit, a chalice, a choir boy, a bell, ringing out from the font of love I continue to draw on, remind me, eternal, that from my mother's marrow I was made, and of their stories I was born and loved to tell my own. Remind me, eternal, of my belonging to all that is and was and will be. And may your love enrich and inspire me to nurture myself as I do others. Amen. Today, I'd like to talk with you about my journey from dysphoria to euphoria. One of the aspects of radical welcome that is so powerful is the invitation for others to join us in community, in our congregational home. We so freely offer our radical welcome that a common sentiment among many UU is that they felt a deep sense of homecoming when they found their beloved congregation and connected with their spiritual sources. A certain resonance of sorts in recognizing fellow travelers, wanderers, wanderers. Ours is no caravan of despair, after all. And this was my experience, too, when I first joined the UU in Oakland, California. It was the beginning of the church year. We were at choir rehearsal at a break, and I was reflecting on the joy I felt at coming together with people to raise my voice together in song. And I was quite tearful, and I felt that I had a resonance, a real echo with my sense of purpose and of belonging to the congregation and to the choir and to that faith and to the love that will not let you go. The choir director must have noticed the look on my face because he approached me and asked if I was all right. And I told him I'd found my spiritual home and we shared an embrace, clearly in the before times. And I walked on from that moment finding a bit more peace, a bit more joy, and a lot more ease. And this only continued to deepen and grow as I became a member of this beloved congregation and engaged with you in the process of lifelong spiritual development. I knew I had found my forever home here with you at UUAA, and I can tell you now what you already know, or you wouldn't be sitting with me here today, is that when that piece of the spectrum of your life, that spiritual dimension, comes into focus, when that prism is turned just so, and the full spectrum of one's life is finally revealed, all the colors and hues and blends of the spectrum, when they all come into focus, resplendent and broken, shattered and remade again and again, when that light is allowed to shine at its brightest and its fullest, there can be a felt sense of, dare I say, euphoria, to be so open and present, so resonant and seen. A conduit, a chalice, a choir boy, a bell. Today, I wish to draw a parallel between the journey towards finding one's spiritual home and the journey of gender exploration and expression. Both paths lead to liberation, community, responsibility, and joy. Both paths bring people from a state of dysphoric living into one of possible euphoria. Both paths require deep questioning, radical welcome, and a search for truth. For me, I felt that dysphoria as starkly physical. I lived in a state of constant corporeal unease. My body was a battleground, an obstacle, a hindrance, a ghost. I expended so much mental, emotional energy thinking and feeling about how my body was so wrong that I forgot to feel good about myself at all. I could not know on a gut level, as I do now, that I was wholly complete because my lens was out of focus. My prism was canted at such an angle that it made it seem as if I could only be a fraction of myself at any one time. I was so checked out that I was completely removed from any spiritual sense of belonging, from my wholeness. In that state of dis-ease, I punished myself and strayed even further from peace and love, and I lived in a dysphoric despair that I would never find ease, never find joy, never find peace. I went so far as to even deny myself joy, to both receive it and to experience it. If that's not dysphoria, I don't know what is. I was turned away from my purpose, from my potential, from my passion, because I could only focus on my pain. I would posit that for some, the journey to spiritual wholeness and forgiveness begins in pain, in shame, in disgrace, in dis-ease. For some, the journey is to end the pain. For others, to accept it. For others, to transform it. I would argue that the journey to spiritual wholeness revolves around changing the focus of your lens, adjusting your outlook, your in-look, your introspection, your search for truth. Adjusting that prism of self-understanding to more vibrantly live into your faith, your service, your ministry, to see the ways in which all are called. I would hold up for your inspection today the idea that coming home to UU brings a certain kind of euphoria. Sorry, not sorry. as an antidote, a natural co-occurrence next to the dysphoria of a spiritually starved life. After years of self-work, community support, and medical intervention, I changed my physical form to one that more closely matched my gender. As more and more pieces of me aligned, it was as if my prism was slowly being turned, millimeter by millimeter, year by year, experience by experience, until it reached the precise spot where my full spectrum of joyful light could be revealed. As I was more able to be at peace with myself, my ability to open up to spiritual connection and truth-seeking increased. As I was able to put down shame, put down worry, put down my facade, and be myself, I was able to come more fully into my authentic, spiritually nourishing being. The way I can most fully live out my purpose is to be in alignment with myself and with my spirit. Coming out as transgender and making the changes I did brought me to a place where I am more than capable of transmitting and receiving joy. I am dedicated to it. The more I am capable of transmitting and receiving love, the more I am dedicated to keeping my heart oriented towards manifesting love in everything I do. Thank you, Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich. Imagine, if you will, the white light on the far side of the prism as spiritual evanescence. All of that resounding yes, all of that deep magic, all of my mother's dreams, all of the seeds they planted, every possibility of every combination that makes us unique, and everything that binds us together as one. Every bit of love that God has for me and for us and for our greater purpose. When my prism is turned just so, tuned correctly, that light is condensed and dispensed until what you see is the resplendent spectrum that is me, no longer fractured or checked out or only partially present. I'm liberated now, having moved from dysphoria to euphoria, from shame to joy, on a journey that I believe can resonate with many of us on our journey to spiritual wholeness and fulfillment. As I have come to be at home in this faith tradition, in this congregation, and here on this chancel, so too have I come to find peace at home in my body. Now that I am not at war with myself, I am able to grow my spiritual roots and blossom, resting in the ubiquity of love, the fabric of the universe that surrounds me and will not let me go. A conduit, a chalice, a choir boy, a bell, ringing out from the font of love I continue to draw on. Remind me, eternal, that from my mother's marrow I was made. Of their stories I was born and loved to tell my own. Remind me, eternal, of my belonging to all that is and was and will be. And may your love enrich and inspire me to nurture myself as I do others. Amen.
There is a spectrum of colors, a rainbow of colors inherent in white light. The colors are always there, even though we don't usually see them. Sometimes we need help. Nature helps us when the sun is shining after a rainstorm and a rainbow appears. Droplets of water in the air are like prisms. The sunlight shining through them is bent in such a way that the white light is refracted into the full spectrum of light. What we perceive as the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet of the rainbow. For many of us, rainbows symbolize hope good fortune, new beginnings, and promise or covenant. Joe spoke of having an internal prism that over the years of his transitioning became more and more aligned, the way water drops align in the post-storm sky, aligned until that point of light that is his life was channeled through the prism into a joyful spectrum, a euphoric spectrum, a complete whole spectrum of those rainbow colors. How is your internal prism aligning these days? Settle into a comfortable space, whatever that means for you. Take a few moments now in collective meditation and silence as you hold the image of yourself as a prism refracting light. Is the angle such that light is coming through easily and unhindered? Is it such that those around you can feel its full, joyful spectrum of light that is your authentic self? Or is it such that the alignment is off, the light is not coming through? Are you struggling with personal concerns, overwhelm at the world, distractions of work or family, physical or mental pain, or just having a really bad day and you can't even find the prism? Be aware of what you feel. Acknowledge it as your truth at this moment. Find space in your heart to hold the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Return now from this time of stillness. And know this deep into your bones. You are beautiful. You are loved. You are whole, just as you are. Amen.
Hello.
My name is Eli. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And today I'm going to open with a quote from Genesis. Stay with me. I promise. It's very good. And I'll even counteract it with some Mary Oliver a little later, so. And I won't even read the whole thing, because many of us have already heard the story of creation from Genesis. Many of us have had this story of creation used against us because of our sexuality, our identity, or how we choose to live our lives. But this story is the story I've read the most, maybe because it's the first page. And after, the story of Genesis gets complicated, so I stopped reading. And in fact, the Hebrew Bible in of itself is very complex all the way through, but the story of creation in Genesis has always been my favorite, even as it was used against me. As I've gotten older, I've come to realize why, and it's a few lines that stick out to me. First, Genesis 1, verse 27, and it says, "So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them." And then some other stuff happens, and a little while later, right at the end, verse 31, it says, "God saw everything that he had made, and indeed, it was very good." Very good. God had just gone on this absolutely wild creation spree, creating beautiful things like the sea, morning, animals, bugs, the color orange. Up until this moment, it was just good. When God created humans, not just one, but two, it became very good. Fallible, imperfect humans were very good. I grew up Catholic. I'll pause here for you to process your shock. Growing up Catholic, for those of you who don't know, as a child means sacraments. There's, of course, baptism when you're born, but one of the biggest moments of a young Catholic kid's life is their confirmation. Confirmation is one of the 7 sacraments, and very watered down, it is when you devote yourself to God and the church. It is way deeper than that, but as a child, that's as far as I understood it anyway. What made that day so special to me was that everyone I saw that day was so proud, so happy for me. I got to wear a beautiful little dress. I got to wear a circle of fake flowers with ribbons that flowed behind me, and the little girl that I was back then felt like a magical fairy. Plus, I got more money afterwards than I had ever seen in my life. I left the church in my early teens, and I've done a lot of spiritual wandering. And even though I've wandered back to a more Christian spirituality, I have not returned to the Catholic Church. But I am going to confess, that's another sacrament, to you all right now. I miss sacraments. I miss ritual. I've been searching for it a long time and haven't found something that felt right, even as I found a new ritual of every week I take a prescribed amount of testosterone and inject it into my thigh. And even that ritual wasn't enough, because this was a necessary ritual, one that began to give me the body that felt the most comfortable for me. During this time, I fought through a lot of emotions, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to them about with. I couldn't express how hard it was to see myself as deserving of this life-saving treatment. I couldn't express the near ecstatic elation I had once I started to feel the changes take place. All the messages I had ever received growing up about this were, "Good for you, but please be a little bit quieter about it if you don't mind." This, of course, is not a universal experience, but I suspect it is more widespread than just me. We live in a hyper-individualistic society where we are discouraged from bringing our grievances to the public square. We are told to be happy it's not worse, even by those we hold close. As trans people, it goes even further, and we're told that we aren't really trans if we have joy. As we fight tooth and nail for medical treatments, social change, and recognition, there is this required level of despair we are expected to maintain. Even as I got my hormones, I am told that some changes are irreversible. Even as I went under the knife to take away my breast, I was cautioned that it was permanent. I'm expected to be full of fear and caution and regret. Not once was I explicitly told that I would be joyful. This is, oddly enough, what has brought me back to think about ritual, about sacraments. Those people on the day I wore my little dress and was anointed with oil, and my priest said words I cannot even recall, and I made promises. Those people around me told me how happy I'd be after it all, how close to God I'd be. There is a power when a community is behind you like that, being expectant of your joy. So I began to imagine what it would be like if I had an entire community telling me how joyful I would be, supporting me through these medical treatments and surgeries. If I had community back when I came out as trans, a group of people to listen to me and tell me about all the happiness instead of all the sorrow. Even though I was feeling messy and stumbling, imperfect and failing, what if the community told me that I was very good? There are many interpretations of Genesis, but something I take away from the story of creation is that we were never meant to be alone, that God stopped creating when he created community. According to the text, we are created in the image of God, whatever you may call them. That means divine creation lives within us, and it is a spiritual experience to take part in it. Mary Oliver wrote, quote, "I don't want to end up simply having visited this world." And I do not want to end up simply having been anything myself. I do not want to simply give in to the despair I am supposed to have. I want to build a community that will tell me how very good I am, and a community that I can call very good in return. We talk about how to become better allies, how to become radically welcoming, and I think crafting a community that treats transition, either socially, mentally, physically, or all, as a sacred right is a pathway. To have support system offered, and an entire community ready to tell trans folks about all the joy they have coming their way. Possibly also some envelopes and cards full of money. At its most basic definition, a sacrament is an outward expression of a connection with God or the divine. To me, that's what transition has been. And it is a gift I want to share with others so I do not end up having simply visited, that I will have made it better here. So how can we all make it better? How can we as a beloved community, a congregation, make things better? The first step, and the most immediately doable, is to learn and unlearn. Unlearn the tragedy you've been sold. Examine how you feel about trans people transitioning. Unlearn the binaries and open yourself up to the possibilities of joy. Allies, learn from the trans community, and trans people, let us learn from each other. Consider your spaces. Are they affirming? How loud is that affirmation? How explicit? Does your space make room in leadership and organizers for trans voices to serve? And consider your voice and how we can use it to uplift trans joy. Together, as a community, we can be the noisemakers and the disruptors of this narrative. We can all take part in the divine gift of creation and celebration of transition. Thank you.
Go back to the fire, turn the wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit, only can the Spirit turn the world around. Oh, so is life a Batiwa. So is life. Oh, so is life a Batiwa. So is life. Oh, so is life a Batiwa.
Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? That song brings us so much joy. The joy of multiple voices joining in as one community. What can you do as you leave today to share that joy with others?
Think about what style, what expression helps you feel seen and comfy. Which gender roles feel empowering, which feel like a burden.
What can you do to tune your prism to shine your light in the most resplendent way?
Go in peace with love for who you are.
And of course, go enjoy and turn the world around.